good morning. Welcome to Glazing with Amaco. I'm Kara, and this is my first time doing a Glazing with Amaco that is specifically for low fire. So most of the time I talk about and demonstrate different effects that you can get and best practices with Amaco Cone 5 glazes. But we do have an extensive selection of Cone 05 low fire glazes for earthenware, and some of them just give some really gorgeous effects. So today I wanted to talk about how we layer opalescent glazes with the velvet underglazes to get different kinds of colors and effects. It's really great for texture. You can do it on smooth surfaces, but it really is a technique that works best on a textured surface. So I'm going to share with you what I've been doing is a lot of wall hangings lately. So first I'm going to show you. This is a wall hanging that I made. Let's go to an overhead. Here we go. This is a wall hanging that I made. You can put an air plant in here or other kinds of small things. And this is 67M Sedona Red Earthenware Clay. And you can see it's just a beautiful, rich color. And I glazed it with 026 turquoise. And it looks pretty much exactly like it does on the label. And you can see that it is just a beautiful turquoise color, even on a dark color clay body like this. And it does show the texture, which I really love, being able to use textured surfaces and have them still show up. Now, for those of you who may be new to watching Glazing with Amaco, sometimes I can see comments and sometimes I cannot. If I don't see your comment, I will respond later after the stream, so don't worry. Go ahead and put a comment in the chat, whether you're on YouTube or watching us on Facebook. Arden, hi Arden, good morning. I do see your comment. So I am watching comments on the low fire Amaco group this morning. So this is just on red clay. There's no underglaze on this piece. So what I wanted to show you next is when I did something where I'm just using this is using cinnamon underglaze. You can see this was a white clay. This is 25M, which is a creamy white clay body. And I used the cinnamon underglaze V385. And then put the 026 turquoise over it and fired to cone 05. And I get this great color combination, so I used it on another wall hanging. This will eventually have a weaving inside of it. I haven't really decided yet, but you can see the color where there's the stamp texture. The color is just really vivid, and it gives a dark, it gets really dark where the glaze is thinner. And you can see it's very different, even though these are the same opalescent glazes on these two pieces. By using the velvet, I got a different effect, and I really like that. So I'm going to show you what I did. So I have these wall hangings, which are for air plants, and this one has already been painted with 2 coats. Actually, did I do 2? I think I did 3 coats of the V385 cinnamon. So I'm going to set that aside because it's dry, and I'm going to show you how. So I started on this one, and this one's going to be the V389 Flame Orange underglaze, and with this one I'm going to use Bluebell over it. Sorry, I'm just checking to see that I'm not missing any messages. So I use a nice soft fan brush, and I'm making sure that I get the underglaze into all the texture. and any part that's going to be visible. Now I can glaze this on all sides, you know, as most earthenware does get glazed on all sides and stilt it. But I usually, because I come from a mid to high fire background, I do usually just dry foot the bottoms, just so you know. So this form is meant to hold an air plant. So you can have like a decorative wall tile that has a beautiful air plant growing in it. I myself am not very good with plants, but I have lots of people in my family who are, so I figured they would enjoy this. Hi, is that Niela? I'm sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing your name. A beautiful color. It is a beautiful color. I love the look of the turquoise opalescent glaze, especially with that cinnamon underglaze. So fun. So I want to make sure to get the underglaze on all of the surfaces. And I'm not going to do the back, but I could if I wanted, but I don't need to since it's going to hang on the wall. I will go all the way around the edge and get inside the holes as well. And I will do a second coat at least, maybe even a third. Depends on the color. Some of the underglazes are still quite strong even with 2 coats. Like the flame orange and the cinnamon are pretty good with 2 coats, but I like to do 3 just to be on the safe side. So I'm going to set that aside with my flame orange underglaze. And I'm going to do a coat of the turquoise on this. So like I said, this one was the cinnamon, in case you're wondering why the color is so different. Hi, dry footing the bottom means that I don't put any glaze on the bottom. So like this was fired, no glaze, so it just goes right on the kiln shelf, and that's referring to dry footing. When you're talking about pottery, let me see if I have a piece. Yes, I do. So here's a pot that has been dry footed. Instead of glazing the bottom and stilting it, there's no glaze on the bottom, so it's a dry foot. So my turquoise, I have my 026 turquoise, and this is an older jar. You'll see it's kind of crunchy around the sides, but it still works just fine. This is the same jar that I used for the other pieces I showed you. And after this, I think I'm actually going to knock all those chunky bits into the jar and mix it up with an immersion blender, just so it's nice and smooth. And even though it's several years old, it goes on just fine. If you have an older glaze and it's cracking, you may want to add some gum solution to it. If it's thick, I don't recommend that you add water unless you also are adding gum solution. And the thickness of the glaze, it should be somewhere around the pudding consistency. You don't want it to be too thin. People who come from a background of glazing with dipping sometimes or using clear glazes, sometimes they're used to glazes being very thin. And in this case, these glazes should be kind of on the thick side. And if you add gum solution and it's still cracking, contact our Amaco tech support. They will help you out. So I'm getting glaze on all the front surfaces, but I'm not going to go too far down the sides. Maybe just a little bit. And I'm going to set that aside. And while that dries, I wanted to show you some combos that I have. So let's go over to my slideshow. So I have a slideshow. This is 012 Tawny over Velvet 336 Royal Blue. Isn't that lovely? Here is 020 Bluebell over V345 Light Green. Really watery, soft. I love that. 020 Bluebell over V381 Amethyst. I love how the blue highlights show up. 026 Turquoise, which is what I'm using today, over V353 Dark Green for a different effect. 030 Autumn Leaf, kind of creamy color, over V370 Velour Black. Love that. 042 Moss Green over V309 Deep Yellow. Another one of my favorites. Really gorgeous. And 052 Fuchsia over V314 Chocolate Brown. Really nice. Okay, one more. 052 Fuchsia over V380 Violet. If you're looking for something really pinky purple, really fun. So those are some of the options you can get. I mean, one of my favorites is using the blue opalescent over a light green underglaze, and it doesn't look turquoise, but it just has this really, really fun look to it. Sorry. We're cycling through those again. So there's so many options with the opalescents, and you can create all kinds of effects. So I'm going to get a second coat of underglaze on this. So I won't be glazing this one today, just the underglaze, but I will be putting Bluebell on this one. And you saw the Bluebell sample when I was going through the slideshow. Just lots of color variation, but I like that it's really a playful combination of the light blue and the bright orange. Let's see. Let me see if I can. Love the colors, yeah. And yes, the opalescent glazes are still in production. They have not been discontinued. You can find them at your local Amaco distributor. And they are food safe, lead-free, wonderful, easy-to-use glazes. And if you're using mid-range and are wanting to try something low-fire, they're very similar in a lot of ways to our Celadons, but they are more opaque on darker clay, so you get kind of a different effect. So they break, and then where they're thicker, they're more opaque. So I'm going to get it all the way around. Sorry, checking to see. Niela, I'm glad I pronounced your name right. And I'm glad that the videos have been helpful. They are a lot of fun to do. So I'm going to set that one aside, my underglaze aside. So like I said, this one had the cinnamon and turquoise, and it's not quite dry, but it's close enough. So I'm going to go ahead and get a second coat on there. Now I am seeing some little pebbles in here, and they might be oolites. So the opalescents sometimes do develop oolites, which are calcifications. So if I see little bumps in the glaze before firing, I will rub those so that they pop out and don't stay on my piece. Like right here, you might not be able to see it, but there's a little oolite right there. There we go. It's just a little one, But you see, something like that will actually not, it's just tiny, but it will not melt. And so if I don't remove it, there will be a little bump after firing, and I don't want to have a little bump there. So I just run my hand over the dry glaze before I fire, and wherever I feel a little bump, I just pop it off, and then there it is. Now you can remove oolites by sieving the glaze if you choose. While I have my glaze open, I'm going to use my knife to put the chunky stuff around the edges back in. You can sieve your glaze. I find that that's very time consuming, and I lose some of my glaze, so what I do is I just, as I'm glazing, before I put my pieces into the kiln, I just make sure to run my hand over them. If I feel any little bumps, I'll just use my little knife or my fingernail and just pop those little bumps off. We do add, this is an older jar, which is why this has it. We do have an additive now to our glazes. So if you have a newer glaze, you probably will not find oolites in it. Nice to know. And yes, I like to know about the bumps too. Now there are some glazes that are supposed to have bumps in them. So before you start removing every single bump, keep in mind that some glazes are supposed to have bumps. If you're using an older CTL glaze, for example, those are the crystals. If you're using cone 5 glazes, we do have a few glazes that have things in them, speckles. So you don't want to remove those. Before I forget, more things to talk about in addition to our opalescents. For anybody who is headed to NCECA this week, Amaco has a booth at NCECA, and let me go back to the overhead for a moment. And we'll be at NCECA, and I will be there this year. I'm not always there. And I am bringing pins. It's hard to see, but it's the Amaco 5.6. I also have Amaco Glaze fan pins. I made these. And if you come up and say hi and tell me that you are an Amaco Glaze fan, I will give you one of my pins as long as I have them. And they have brand new, they are all glazed with brand new Amaco glazes, new this year. I can't tell you the names yet because, well, I'm not allowed to tell you the names yet. But those are two of our new Cone 5.6 Amaco glazes. I think it's kind of hard to see, but there is actually words on there. And so if you come up and say hi, I will give you a pin. And I will be meeting up at the coffee bar by the vendor area on Thursday morning. I'll be there around 10 a.m. if anybody wants to come and say hi. I'll be hanging out, and I hope to see you all there one more time. Enjoy your opalescents with your velvets. And I hope that you will share them with us on the Amaco Low Fire Glaze group. Oh, Neil said, can you put the velvets on greenware so the glazing can be done on bisque? And absolutely, you can put the velvets on greenware, and then you don't have to worry about, you can then put the glaze on bisque. These are both bisque pieces that I was glazing today. These were both bisque. So I don't put glaze on greenware. But you can certainly put the underglaze on greenware and then just glaze directly when it comes out of the kiln. Velvets can go on both bisque or greenware. It's one of the really wonderful things about them. And I'm looking at my oolites here. So that was exciting. I got a comment on the low fire page. And so these will just go into the kiln, and I'll have them out for next week's Q and Amaco, and I'll share with you what it was like at NCECA. So I hope to see you in Cincinnati this week, and if not, I will see you here live next week, next Tuesday. So join me then. Thanks for joining me on my glazing adventures. Oh, I have one last thing I forgot. So just for those, an extra for those of you who fire to mid-range temperatures, this is the opalescent turquoise at cone 5. And it did not run off the pot. It did run a little bit, but um, it actually came out quite nice. It lost some of its blue. It's mostly just a green. I've also fired the white, and it comes out mostly clear. I haven't done extensive testing with the opalescents at cone 5 because they are so beautiful at O5. But if you are firing cone 5 and you happen to have some opalescents, go ahead and give them a test. See how they look. They're not bad. They're really interesting. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and see you later. Thank you.